The first two artists I want you to be familiar with are Big Mama Thornton and the Chords. Now, these are the last two musicians that we're looking at before we jump into rock and roll. And they both come from R&B in the R&B genre. So we have Big Mama Thornton, I'll label here as BMT, and the Chords. These two artists were really important in terms of white audiences starting to listen to them, especially Shaboom by the Chords. It was a doo-wop sound, and doo-wop was part of R&B. It was the purely vocal music in R&B, or there was a lot of background vocals in R&B at that time. And that song really helped introduce a lot of white people to the R&B music. Then as we move into 1954 and 55, you'll see right here, the first number one rock song is Rock Around the Clock by Bill Haley and the Comets. And so I want you to be able to identify and hear Bill Haley and the Comets. And then these are the big artists of the time. You'll see that there is about 8 of them that I want you to know, and I want you to know the songs that they perform. All these artists come out within about a year of each other. It's a pretty amazing thing that happened in the mid-50s to have this many new artists come out at once. Bill Haley and the Comets probably are the best band to look at in terms of a mixture of the country, R&B, jazz, and swing. If you watch the video for Shake, Rattle, and Roll, you'll see that they're dressed just like Hank Williams and some of the country musicians were playing. And the music sounds like swing, only it's an AAB form with R&B lyrics. In fact, it's a cover of an R&B song. Johnny Cash was a little more country, and most of us are familiar with his music. It would be hard to call him one of the first rock and rollers, but he's an important artist of the time and helping to have that crossover appeal between country and rock. Jerry Lee Lewis and Little Richard are brothers from another mother. Jerry Lee Lewis is white, Little Richard is black, and they both bring in the idea of rock and roll being out of control. They're the first wild singers and crazy singers. They're going to scream and yell in the song. They're going to jump up and down on stage. Their performance is going, not just the music, but the actual way that they perform is going to be part of the entertainment and part of the appeal of their music, part of that rebellious nature. Elvis Presley will become the biggest name, and he will become the second best-selling artist of the 20th century after only the Beatles. And he is the one that is going to popularize rock and roll, especially through television. He's going to reach into the living rooms of almost every American and introduce it to this style. He has a strong presence, and he's able to reach across the color lines, meaning that he's able to appeal to both black and white Americans and people from the North and the South. 3 other important artists are Billie Holiday, Chuck Berry, and Ritchie Valens. Billie Holiday really starts the idea of a band, of a rock and roll band. Instead of an ensemble, Buddy Holly's band is made up of the drums, the bass, and the guitar. He's a little bit more country. You'll hear in his sound a more of a yodeling sort of sound, a little more rockabilly than, say, Elvis, Little Richard, or Jerry Lee Lewis. But he's really important in defining what it means to be a rock and roll band. He and Ritchie Valens died on the same day in 1959. They only recorded music for about 2 years, and at the height of their popularity, they died in this plane crash. Ritchie Valens is important because he introduced the idea of bringing in Chicano rock. And it was really the first time that we had a very strong Chicano influence on the popular music of the day, and he wrote some beautiful songs, La Bamba and Donna, which I'd like you to know both of those. And finally, Chuck Berry. If Elvis is the most important best-selling artist of the decade, Chuck Berry might be the most influential artist on the next decade. And that's because the Beatles start listening to Chuck Berry and they really like him and they emulate him about 7 or 8 years later. He comes out with some very cutting-edge songs in Roll Over Beethoven and Johnny Be Good, and you'll hear that the guitar is being used in a way it had never been used before. He starts the idea of that really strong lead guitar. Muddy Waters had done it a little bit, but now Chuck Berry's going to turn it into rock and roll. It's no longer the blues. So I'd like you to listen through each of these artists. You should be able to talk a little bit about them, know when they were around, understand what genre they were in, some characteristics of their music, and then also at least 2 of their songs. And these songs I'm going to be quizzing you on throughout the class. The songs are all here in the Rock Appreciation 1950s playlist, and you can add this playlist to your phone and listen through it. You'll need to know all of these songs. They're all very important. One of the things I would like you to listen to in these songs is see if you can hear the AAB form, which is a very simple form where they say a line, repeat the line, and say another line. And a good example of that would be You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog. Both Big Mama Thornton and Elvis Presley covered that song. And the song says, you ain't nothing but a hound dog crying all the time. You ain't nothing but a hound dog crying all the time. You may be a lover, but you ain't no friend of mine. So that has line 1, line 2, line 3. I'm hoping that after what we've done in the beginning of this class that you can hear that fairly easy. You should get pretty sick of that sound here by the time you're done with all these songs. This explosion of rock and roll is only going to last until about 1958-59, okay? So it's going to be about a 4 or 5 year experiment with this very simple AAB form, and then people are going to get tired of it, and rock and roll is going to almost disappear in 1960. It gets revived again in the early 60s by the Beatles, but there's a period there where it seems like rock and roll is just going to be about a 5 year experiment.